And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters for today. Dr. Alison Mello has been in education for 30 years as a classroom teacher, a math specialist, a director of curriculum, and an assistant superintendent. She's done it all. In addition to co-authoring this latest Corwin book with Dr. Nicki, Alison is co-author of several other books, including Fluency Doesn't Just Happen with Addition and Subtraction, Fluency Doesn't Just Happen with Multiplication and Division, Working with Beaded Number Lines, A Teacher's Guide to Math Workshop, and the forthcoming Working with 1-Inch Tiles, Building Better Math Instruction, a Toolkit for Leaders. She's very prolific. She has spent the last decade as a national speaker, math consultant, and graduate instructor of in-service and pre-service teachers. Alison enjoys developing practical strategies to address issues that districts and teachers face in their schools and classrooms every day. She uses her understanding of leadership, curriculum, and best practices to inspire and assist leaders and teachers in elevating and transforming math instruction. And Dr. Nicki Newton is an education consultant who works with schools and districts around the country and Canada on K-8 math curriculum. She, like Alison, has done it all. She's taught elementary school, middle school, and graduate school. She has a master's and a doctorate of education from the Department of Curriculum and Teaching at Teachers College, Columbia University, specializing in teacher education and curriculum development. She's greatly interested in teaching and learning practices around the world and has researched education in Denmark, Guatemala, and India. She's written over 40 books. I actually think that's outdated information. I think it's over 50 now. And is excited to be part of the team of writers for the McGraw-Hill new series, Reveal Math. In addition to her newest Corwin book, other recent books include Accelerating K-8 Math Instruction and also A Teacher's Guide to Math Workshop. She is an avid pinner, blogger, tweeter, or Xer, I guess, and is happy to Zoom into any book group to chat. So with that, I will hand it over to you both. Take it away.
Great. So how did we get here? I think Dr. Nicki is going to go first.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, welcome. I'm just so excited to be here and getting the opportunity to write the book. So thank you, Alison, and thank you, Erin, and the whole quarantine. I got here, I started teaching in the late 80s. And at that time, some of you weren't born, but for those who were, the Rigby and the Wright group had taken the world by rage. And I kind of fell into that and went to everything that they offered. And so I really, really was a disciple of Reading Workshop. And I did all the workstations. I did all the, small group. I did it all. And then fast forward to 2003 when I became a math consultant in New York City. The city had adopted Math Workshop as a structure. Now, I wasn't really a math person at the time, but I knew a lot about the workshop because I had done reading. So I was able to transfer that information and just get really good at Math Workshop. So that's kind of how I got here. And I totally believe in it as a structure. And so here I am still talking about Math Workshop.
Well, thank goodness that you are. And I echo the sentiments that Dr. Nicki shared in thanking the Corwin family and Dr. Nicki for partnering with me on this. This book was sort of born during COVID when I was an assistant superintendent, and we were really spending a lot of time talking about the gaps that we were seeing in SEL skills, and they were lagging skills, and they were so important. And we realized, wow, we are not doing Math Workshop the same way. We're not sharing things. And so students aren't having that same opportunity. And it really just got us thinking about how you can elevate Math Workshop to maximize that stuff. But even long before that, the way that I met Dr. Nicki was when one of my kindergarten teachers said to me, geez, Alison, there has to be a better way to teach math because this whole group instruction, I'm boring myself. The kids don't like it. We're sitting and they're workbooking. And this all came from teachers and saying, is there a better way? And I met Dr. Nicki at a conference in 2013. And her new book had just come out and we became fast friends, and the rest is history. This started in my district and we did it for years and with tremendous results. And I've had the privilege of running a graduate course on Math Workshop for over a decade, and it's been wonderful. And I know some of the people in those classes are here, so thanks for coming. We're really excited about this book and really proud of it. So let's go. Let's hear about you. Are you using Math Workshop? Why did you register for this webinar? What are you hoping to learn? We want to hear about you. Oh, Asheville, I hope that you guys are doing better down there. My microphone is echoey. Let me try to bring my computer a little closer. Tina, is that better? Am I less echoey? Ah, good. Okay, first time with Math Workshop. Great. Great. Hi, Karina. Hi, Hannah. Okay, first timer. Okay, we have coaches. We have some people who've been doing this for a while. We have some people who are just starting. We have people who are thinking, well, maybe I can use these strategies for other content areas. Yes, you can, for sure. Middle school, yes, we use middle school Math Workshop all the time. And you're curious about the plus. We're excited that you're curious about the plus. And hello to the Bahamas. Okay. So if you are new to Math Workshop, it's really just a structure. And we use that structure to break up your math block to create opportunities for more differentiation. So we start with an opening routine that can be easily differentiated, moving into making the whole group portion, the mini lesson, keeping it mini so that we focus on the learning target. And then transitioning from that to small group instruction, guided math, and workstations that are targeted and differentiated. And then we wrap up with a debrief where we reflect. So it really helps us meet more kids where they are. And as I said, it maximizes your instructional minutes. One thing that teachers really love is it puts your data that you're always collecting. Sometimes maybe you feel like you're collecting it for someone else, and it's data that you need and you can put it to work. And it really helps you better meet the needs of your students. So we really believe that Math Workshop holds the key to getting more done in less time with greater outcomes for all students. So who wouldn't want that? Because we all need more time and we all want to be the best for our students.
Will it work with my math program? Absolutely. It's agnostic, so it works with any program. What do I need to get started? You already have it. Everything that you have is what you need. You need the right mindset and some basic things, whatever you have in your class: cards, dominoes, manipulatives, simple games, dice, all of that. Will this be a lot of work? Yes, absolutely. This is going to be a tremendous amount of work, but it is going to pay off. And so you just have to get organized, establish your systems, and get in a routine, and then it will run like clockwork.
Yeah, if you're someone in the chat who has done this, please reassure those who are new that to not be afraid of the work. It is worth it. It will end up being less work in the long run. So we get this question a lot. Is Math Workshop ability grouping? So say it with me now, Dr. Nicki.
No.
No, it is not ability grouping. This is one of the biggest misconceptions about Math Workshop. We are responding to real-time data and student readiness and where they are in the learning continuum, not ability.
So Math Workshop is flexible, students data informed, discourse rich. It has a specific structure and approach, but it's also very flexible in its structure and approach. So there's components, and people do them a little bit differently, but there is a structure and an approach, and it's differentiated. One thing I want to say again about it not being ability grouping is the groups are targeted, they are flexible, and most important, they are temporary. So it's not like you're a green banana all year long, right? You get to take fruit. So I think that's important. Temporary, flexible, and targeted.
I love that. We don't want to be a green banana. So what's the plus? That's what some people are curious about, right? What makes it Math Workshop Plus? And as we said before, we really were thinking about universal design and SEL skills, but we know that Math Workshop, a really strong Math Workshop, is built on the best practices in math instruction. So we want to see discourse, collaboration, questioning, hands-on, manipulatives, but we really wanted to be more intentional about cultivating in a learning environment that is accessible to all students. So through the lens of universal design for learning and with a lens on social and emotional learning, we really wanted to bring all of those elements together to create an accessible learning environment so students would have a more equitable experience. And that's the plus. So there's call outs throughout the book about equity checks, SEL connections, and then tons and tons of examples of how you can add these universal design elements. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight to give you the plus.
Math Workshop Plus is an equitably designed space to build capacity in math and in language, social skills, self-regulation, time management, and personal responsibility.
And I bet that makes people excited just hearing that. So we built this around the universal design framework, and each chapter aligns with these different domains within universal design for learning.
Okay, so universal design for learning is a teaching approach that works to accommodate the needs and abilities of all learners and eliminates unnecessary hurdles in the learning process. So this means developing a flexible learning environment in which information is presented in multiple ways. Students engage in a variety of ways, and students are provided options for when demonstrating their learning.
Which is part of Math Workshop anyway, right? Like having options and having choice. But we really wanted to think about the whole child. And so for those of you who are engaged in MTSS work, it used to be before we would really focus on the academic portion. That's what we look at through our data. And we've since brought in our scope to think about, okay, what about the SEL competencies? How are my students regulated in the class? How is their attention? How is their social skills, their problem solving, all of that stuff? And does everybody have an equal chance to show what they know in my classroom? Do they have access? Do I have the right modalities available to them? How much am I controlling and how much am I proactively planning? So really, I think that's in a nutshell, is that we are being proactive instead of reactive to create an accessible environment.
The goal of the UDL 2.2 guidelines was to create expert learners. Now, I just want to say something. When we wrote this book, the book is framed around the UDL competencies. So we wrote the book, we were done, we were happy, we were excited. And then the UDL standards changed. And it changed from being an expert learner to learner agency that is purposeful and reflective, resourceful and authentic, strategic and action oriented. Now, that might look like a little small change, but it's not. So we had to rewrite the whole book to the current competencies. And so Math Workshop Plus, ultimately the goal is aligned with Math Workshop. UDL and Math Workshop go together, and it's where we cultivate conditions to support student collaboration, independence, and engagement.
And it's funny because when that happened after the initial panic, we actually said, wow, this aligns even better with Math Workshop. And you may even be thinking, wow, with Responsive Classroom, there are a lot of tie-ins all over the place. And a big push has been for more independence from students. So think about, this is your time to chime in, think about the learning environment in your classroom and what's resonating with you. I'll give you a few things to think about. How motivated and engaged are students? What do they know about how they learn best? Do they believe math is about sense making or just getting answers? Do they utilize resources such as anchor charts and math tools? Now, in order for them to utilize them, they would have to be present, right? You'd have to have anchor charts and the math tools would have to be accessible to them. We'll talk more about that later. And this one has come up a lot since COVID. Do they self-start or do they wait to be guided through the steps? Their hands are raised before you even start. So any of these are just things for you to think about. Do you have choice? What is your learning environment like right now? And how does it affect some of these things? Kindergartners are used to using their words to talk out the answers. SEL, equity, and ensuring all students are actively engaged. So important. Yes. Self-starting is a major, major issue. So we're going to talk tonight about how to equip the environment to help them do that better. Yes, please. Yes, please, and thank you. Okay, so keep dropping in. Yes, anchor charts, math toolkits, great. Almost done with the first 20 days. Yes, self-starting. I will say if we want them to self-start, we need to not answer every single question they ask and redirect them to their tools. Okay, artifacts. All right, so keep popping those in there and we'll check in on those throughout our discussion.
So what specific actions can you take to add the plus to your math workshop? So now we're going to begin to unpack some of these ideas. Design multiple means of engagement. You can design multiple means of representation, and you can design multiple means of action and expression.
So in breaking these down, and this is how our chapters are laid out, in multiple means of engagement, we can think about designing in advance options to welcome interest and identity. So that's a lot about choice, autonomy, relevance, play, addressing biases and distractions and threats. Helping kids, and I know this is a big one, to sustain effort and persistence. Can they persevere? So that's a little bit about goal setting and having the right level of challenge and support. And then again, fostering that independence as part of a bigger learning community and feedback. And then designing options for emotional capacity. And you'll see a lot of connections to SEL there as we go through that.
So as we look at welcoming interests and identities, this is really about having a space where there's joy and there's play, and it's safe to operate as a human being, not only academically, but on a personal level with each other, about the community building. It's about giving kids choice in what they do and how they do it, and about building autonomous learners, right? Think about that as a goal. In what ways are you building autonomous learners? Kids that can self-start, kids that can do it on their own, kids that are agents of their own learning and playing an active role in what they're doing in that classroom every day.
Yeah, and actually want to do it, right? Because they're interested in it.
Yes.
So when we think about how those relevant and authentic connections support equity, we really need to think about what relevance means. Sometimes we're going to find whatever our core resource that we're using, as great as it may be and as standard aligns in HQIM it may be, it might not have contexts that are going to resonate with our students. So we might have to upgrade those so that we can make sure it's relevant. Or it might be like if I was in Hawaii and the problem was about snowboarding, that's not really relevant. I don't have any context for that. So students are more likely to see value in lessons that pertain to them, that they feel are real and authentic, that they can make connections. So we really want to think about intentionally, how can we just drop in little pieces of everyone's culture, language, foods in the classroom activities whenever we can.
Anna, no, it's not too late. You can join in. And the next one is sustaining effort and persistence. And so this is about how do you get kids to know what they're doing, want to do it, and keep trying? How do you get them to persevere? So it's about setting goals. And goals should be visual. See the example here. I can reach my goals, and it's learning how to multiply, and it sets out a path of how we do that. You need visual goals. Bhagchi talks about the importance of kids and adults being able to see where they're going. If you know where you're going, you're much more likely to get there. So we need goals, and that's what this is about. Setting goals, giving kids feedback about those goals, setting up goal partners with kids, and in turn fostering independence. Because if they know what their goals are and they're actively working towards meeting them, they're becoming more and more independent. And giving kids, even like this little poster over here, what to do when you're stuck, right? Kids need to know, I'm gonna get stuck. So I don't just run to the teacher. What do I do? You're really, really trying to foster that independence in lots of different ways. I know what I was thinking when the slide changed, because Charlene was saying that her kids are engaged, but she was looking for things that are interesting to them about looking at interest. And Allison knows what I'm going to say. You gotta go to AI. I'm not going to say more than that because this workshop is not about that, but. You can go in and put, I am a eighth grade teacher in the Bronx, New York. My kids come from the Dominican Republic, the USA, and Haiti, and I want some cool word problems that tap into their culture. And and you'll get like tons of stuff. So I'm just saying that's another day, but you got to try AI. Right. I just wrote a book for Corin on AI. I'm writing a 3-book series on it. You got to go to AI
So
for the.
that's that'll be your future webinar, is that we'll really take a deep dive because
I will
yeah.
stop talking about that now, but just couldn't let that slip.
I knew you were going to say it. And there are already, I mean, AI is great, but there's also tons of wonderfully relevant routines and resources and non-curricular tasks that are out there that we can also share.
Yes.
Did you talk about the action-oriented feedback?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thinking about goals and students setting goals, the idea of having students set their own goals and monitor them is a part of this book that comes up across multiple chapters because it has so much value. And it's something that novice math workshop users aren't usually there yet, which is totally normal. But when we get into the space of goal setting, we really need to think about the SEL implications. So how will that affect self-regulation? It can be great, but it also can be a spot where students can become frustrated or exasperated or dysregulated if the goals aren't met. So we're going to help students evaluate their goals as a match for their readiness, where they are in the learning trajectory. And if the goal is a struggle to be met, we're going to think about maybe the timeline is off. Maybe the modality is off. Maybe we need to show what we know in a different way. And we always just want to reinforce for students the power of yet. You don't know it yet, but you're going to get there. So when students come with these messages of I can't or I don't know, it's really easy to just show them. And we really want this to be a space where kids build their own metacognition and their own self-reflection to say, what don't I know? Instead, even better, be asset-based. What do I know? And what do I actually need? And teaching them what they need to successfully learn. So is it more think time? Is it a different tool? Do you need the question repeated? And a lot of that comes down to our expectations and how we run the class. If we answer every question, there's no need for them to do it themselves. If we sit with them to do every workbook page, how are they going to self-start? So we do have to reflect on our own actions and behavior. So there are strategies in the book that really help kids to build that muscle of thinking about their own learning and reflecting on their role in a group. Am I an asset to my group? Do I take us off task? Do I keep us on task? How do I stay motivated? Am I self-aware? And do I know that I can get better at this? So think about your class. It's been a few weeks, or some of you maybe longer for school, might have been like 2 months now. A challenge that you might currently be having. And based on what we've talked about so far, or if you have a different strategy, what's one strategy that could maybe mitigate that challenge? Because one thing we love about Math Workshop is that students learn from each other. And one thing about a webinar like this is that you're all going to learn from each other, more so than probably us. So please share. We want to steal your ideas too. The challenge that you might be having, stamina. So in the beginning of the year, during the first 20 days, practice the stamina and chart it just like you would for reading, and then reflect on it each day. Low language, we are going to have a whole section on language strategies to support language. The beginning of K, it's very tricky, a lot of visuals. Behaviors.
This idea of perseverance is a mathematical practice, right? It's the first mathematical practice.
Yes.
And so I have a Pinterest board on growth mindset that is worth checking out. There's so much stuff out there on it. How do you grow a student's growth mindset? And it's not a lesson, right? It's not, 'cause sometimes it gets reduced to, every Wednesday we're going to do this thing. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having growth mindset routines, but it's really important for us to always think, how do we integrate growth mindset in meaningful ways throughout the year so that kids can become agents of their own learning?
It's a really great point. And I think I just read in the chat that someone's struggling with the range of readiness that students have. And I think that's one of the beauties of Math Workshop is meeting kids where they are in the guided math groups, and then having targeted workstations around some of those maybe foundational skills that aren't fully developed yet. And I know that Dr. Nicki wrote a book on acceleration that could probably be super helpful. There's probably going to be any problem you can pose. She's either probably already written a book or is about to write a book about how to solve that problem. And she'll probably rope me into writing it with her.
Of course. Tina has written about the menu versus the workstation. And I know we're not going in depth on workshop, but I do think that's worth talking about because that's a big piece.
It
That
is.
idea of are you going to do menus or workstations? Now, I used to be a workstation person. I really believe
Station rotation.
in the station rotation. But I have since really taken a liking to menus. And I think it's either or, it depends on your personality. So whatever is going to help you keep your personal sanity, that's what you need to do. There's not one that's better than the other. They're just completely different systems. And I
Right.
like menu because it gives kids more flexibility. I'm gonna let Allison speak to it because I know she's a big fan of menu.
Well, I think it comes down to attention span, and the idea also that not everybody needs your guided math group to be 15 minutes, and you're sitting there saying, I don't need all these minutes with these kids, and I can see things burning down because the attention span isn't working. So I have found teachers who really feel safer in a station rotation. We've given them some tips to make it make choice within the other stations and not put yourself in the rotation so that you can be pulling kids from anywhere so that your groups can be varied in time. So there's definitely strategies. But yes, that's we're not doing a super deep dive there, but I'm glad that you asked. And I'm glad that Dr. Nicki shared that because I think it's important. And again, you might have one year that's really successful with a menu, and the next year you're like, this isn't working, and I need to go back to a station. That happens all the time. People go back and forth.
So, in terms of designing multiple means of representation, there's perception, language, and symbols, and building knowledge. I really want to talk about perception for a second. Um, so, Allison and I, we both helped each other with all the chapters, but we took the lead on certain chapters, and I took the lead on perception. And I was like, what? How do I work through this? And it really, really pushed me because I'm like Miss Anchor Chart. If there was an award for, for anchor charts, I would get it. Okay. I would get it because I really believe in an anchor chart. A good anchor chart, there's nothing like a good anchor chart that you create with your students. And there needs to be equity, especially, I mean, in the middle school, it doesn't really matter in high school because, you teach the subject, but in elementary school, there's like 50,000 literacy charts and one little yellowed 100 chart somewhere in the back that nobody can see. So I really believe that there has to be a ratio, if we will, of math to literacy anchor charts, and then it should be equal. But I digress. So anchor charts, it really pushed me writing this chapter. That's why I love to write, because I learn. When I write, I learn. And it pushed me to the edge of my learning because I was like, I'm the anchor chart queen, and this is a chapter about anchor charts. But the thing is, there's so much involved in the anchor chart that I had never really thought of before, not with a UDL lens, right? So the UDL lens like zooms in to the anchor chart. Like, what is the font and what are the colors and what is the spacing and who can really read this? Yes, it's pretty, but that doesn't matter. Throw all those butterflies away. I'm talking to primary teachers. The thing is, the anchor chart when we look at perception, which is about details of display, multiple ways of showing things, and a diversity of perspective and identities, you have to think about what you're displaying and who has access. And until I had to write this chapter, I never really thought about it. I was like, all I've got to do is put it up there and then they have access. No, 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 no. That is so far from the truth. You have to put it up there and then zoom. Bam, 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 bam. Does it have this and that and this and that? So it's hard. It was not easy. And so I put some examples, like an anchor chart that has the actual realia up there so kids can see it, an anchor chart that shows different ways of doing it. So this chapter was really something. This idea of perception, I think, is really important because we're always presenting information to kids.
And one of the things I like that you have, and this little screenshot is right from the book, is asking students to give feedback on the anchor chart. Because one of the things that I notice when I go in a lot of classrooms is it's a lot of words. And for some kids, it just becomes wallpaper. It's not serving the purpose that we're hoping that it serves. So getting their feedback might go a long way to making the anchor charts a more effective tool in your classroom.
Absolutely. And having kids create them as well.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen that more and more. Another way that we really need to universally design our classroom, and this is a big one, is really around designing options for language and symbols. And there's so much in this chapter because you can see there's 5 bullets that we cannot include it all in this slide here. But basically, we want to think about language and understanding. So receptive and expressive language in different ways. So visual vocabulary cards have been a favorite of mine for a long time. I didn't want to put something that was commercial in the books. I just made this one myself, highlighting the word rim around the perimeter. And then for area, it would be inside and it would have the squares, right? And the word area in the middle. Thinking about, can kids gain the information even if they don't have the language yet? And if we want to build language, we need a numeracy rich environment, which is kids talking about math, writing about math, right? Using the language of math. And if we want them to use that language, we need to give them language frames and sentence stems and give them the vocabulary. So also in the book, there is a table tented language frame for a conversation. So if Dr. Nicki was my partner, on one side, it would have my prompt. And then on her side, I might say, how did you solve that? And she might say, I solved that by, and then have the vocabulary right there so that we can have a productive conversation. Think about the tools you have through technology and multimedia to make language be more accessible to students. Have students put in their language, have them add the words in their language, Latin roots, and using the language that they have and adding it to the anchor chart that Dr. Nicki was talking about. That's a really great way to eliminate some of those biases in language and open up access for students and let them make connections. Having students show in gestures that they understand. Maybe they can't say the word parallel, but they can show you this is what parallel lines look like. This is positive slope, or this is addition, whatever it is. We have lots of photos in there. And then using individual reference folders, which we talk about a lot in the book, to give students exactly what they need, because not all students need the same thing, right? And that's why we're thinking about how do we proactively prepare all students to be able to understand the symbols, the language, all of that. And when we think about, again, as Dr. Nicki said, when you're writing a book and you're doing your research, you come across things. this was a piece of research that I had not seen previously from Wakefield, saying that students who are pushed to use math language they don't yet understand may experience math anxiety. And that really resonated with me because there's such a strong correlation between math achievement and math anxiety. We don't want to induce math anxiety. I've never met a teacher who says, oh, I hope I go and make the kids anxious today. That's not happening. So what we're trying to think about is how can we reduce the anxiety, because we know that students who report higher levels of math anxiety typically have lower achievement in math and they might avoid it. So this is one really simple way you could do tomorrow. You could go and make a language frame, and you would think of it as a proactive way to prevent that anxiety from happening.
Building knowledge, like, so how are you connecting to prior knowledge? How are you highlighting and exploring patterns in the current knowledge, the critical features, the big ideas and the relationships? How are you connecting ideas for kids? How are you cultivating multiple ways of knowing and making meaning? And how are you maximizing transfer and generalization? And the ways that we do this are through scaffolds, through really building on prior knowledge and building the knowledge that they need to engage in what they're doing, and in figuring out multiple ways of knowing. So even providing kids with study guides, right? So that they have something that they can scaffold into what you are doing. Having reference charts so that kids can look at them and use it as a scaffold that they might need in the unit of study.
And letting them choose that, right? It's there and they can pick it.
Absolutely. And then so it's about equitable access. As we look through an equity lens, we are always searching for ways to help students access information. So how are you doing it in your class? Even in the way that you set up your charts, how are you highlighting what's important? Who needs to write out their own study chart, and who needs like a study chart that's already gotten started? They still have to write some things, but it's already scaffolded some. So you're always thinking about, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I provide equitable access? What are the structures and the systems and the explicit scaffolds that allow everybody to come to the party?
So as you think, I know we've been talking, and as we're talking and I'm looking at what's on the screen, I'm thinking about, we love paper as teachers. We're at the copier all the time, but there's so many other ways besides something written on paper. So as you think about whether it's gestures, visuals, manipulatives, whatever it might be, what's one thing that you might start to be thinking about in a different light, or something that you could be more intentional about in your classroom to give more students access? People like the visual vocabulary and the gestures. The students really like the gestures too, and they like the visual vocabulary. It's very helpful to them. Students evaluating the anchor chart. Yes. Great results with math talks. Yes, Karina. More sentence stems. Yeah, questioning. Questioning is a great tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the importance of student choice. Oh, Dr. Nicki loves her music and her songs. Don't get her going. She can have AI make those too.
I just have one word for you guys. I'll type it in the chat. Suno. You've got to go there, because you go to ChatGPT and you make up a song about whatever you're teaching, and then you go to Suno and they'll put it to music and they'll sing it in any beat in the world. There's like thousands of beats up there that you can pick. So you could do your content song on doubles in heavy metal or rap.
I love, it's in the chat already. Amanda, just scroll up a little bit. It's SUNO. I love the point that someone just made, and I think it applies to everything in Math Workshop. I didn't feel like I could take the time. to make the anchor charts or the time to make the language frames. And what we found is if you take the time to do it right, then you don't have to take time to do it over. And I think we find ourselves as teachers having to go back often or answer countless questions. And this is really about being proactive and front loading it. When there are anchor charts, and that's why Dr. Nicki loves them. She left out of the story that when she came to my district the very first time before we were friends, she went in a K class and went, and I knew it wasn't a good And she said, well, I can tell you teach literacy in here. Where's the math? And I remember just like wanting to die, like, oh my gosh, yes, we need anchor charts. And when I ask teachers about their anchor chart game, they always say in math, because in literacy, I might have some. So I'm so glad you had that moment of realizing that having those anchor charts might help students be more independent. And I love the impact, thinking about the impact of language is just something that we really have to stop and consider because it is a barrier for students. So we're going to go into that last section. Sorry, Dr. Nicki.
I'm sorry. I want to, this actually segues in.
Okay.
In the action and expression, interaction, vary and honor the methods of response, navigation and movement, and optimize access to accessible materials and assistive and accessible technologies and tools. So one of the ladies in the chat, Tessa Rebello, was saying that she has a student, but he can't really document what he said, in a written way. And I was saying that she could have him speak it and text to text or, language.
Yes.
And then AI could write what he's saying so that he could share his thoughts. But also, one of the things that I love that's out right now in terms of expression and understanding is, for multilingual learners, they have these headphones now that are they're not headphones, they're earphones, I guess.
Earbuds, yeah.
They're earbuds. And so they're only like $40 and they work really well, they tell me. I'm about to actually try some out next week. But
I purchased them and I brought them to one of my districts and they came out after we wrote this book. So I'm not sure that we included lots of different tools and strategies, but they work beautifully. They really do. And
yes,
they're inexpensive.
And it translates for the kids. So if you have MLLs and you have like a kid that speaks Nahuatl and you're nobody in the school district speaks Nahuatl, it'll interpret as you're speaking in English. It will tell him in Nahuatl what you have just said. I'm like constantly talking about that because I think schools need to invest.
Well, there's a tool I dropped in the chat called Snorkel, SNORKL, that uses AI where students can explain their reasoning, even draw a picture to a prompt. And it's not just math, it's for other subjects as well. And they can say it in their native language. It will translate it and then it will score it so that you can try. It's so hard to parse out, is this a cognition issue or is it a language issue, right? So I think that really helps us understand, because this is a spot where we do see students with limited English. They might know the math, they just can't get it out. So this book is giving you tons of strategies to help you do that. So this section on interaction, like Dr. Nicki is talking about, is really a spot where I think we have a lot of opportunity to vary options for kids by adding movement, by thinking about different modalities of manipulatives, by thinking about does everyone have to respond in the same way? Can some kids record themselves speaking? Can some kids draw a picture? Can some kids write? Just like even on your state testing, write an equation, write it out in words, draw a picture. There's many different ways that we can do it. So even if we took something as small as manipulatives, like on this screen, we really like manipulatives to be out and accessible. So not with a lid on them in the closet, that kids can go and help themselves. So like the salad bar style, I get what I want and I come and go and I get a little movement break in there. Maybe that's not comfortable for you. So you'd rather have students have individual toolkits. That's great. Unless I'm a kid who might have issues with executive function or attention, because then that becomes something fun for me to play with at my desk. So maybe virtual tools might be better for me and having them on my Chromebook. So it's really about thinking about, are there options for kids? Do they know what works best for them? And is that opportunity there for them? In terms of your opening routine in math workshop, how can you make it visual? How can you incorporate movement? How can you incorporate discussion so that kids aren't just coming into the beginning of math class and sitting by themselves with a pencil and maybe not even able to show what they know? So it's really about options, options. And there are just so many now, like flexible seating. I see it everywhere now, the little wobble stools and all the different things. So anything that you can think of where you could have a choice where you don't, that's what you want to be thinking about. Here, like now we have all these wonderful virtual manipulatives. That can be a scaffold for some kids that other kids maybe won't even notice that they're using. Maybe they're if older. I was a middle school teacher, so maybe they don't want to take out an actual physical manipulative, but they'll use one on a screen and nobody needs to know that they're using it. I love this. This is taken right from middle school classroom. It has a scaffold right here that's on demand if you want it. And if you don't, you don't. Thinking about multiple tools and like varying the medium. So right here, I've got my concrete manipulative. I've got my whiteboard. I've got context that's going to make it relevant and engage me. And then I'm going to use questioning as a teacher. And then I can elevate, that graduated support. I can release and fade some of these supports, but as the kids become more fluent. Here is a great spot with that context where you can get that relevance, that cultural relevance. We talked about eliminating the bias so that kids can relate to the context. But also a bigger one is, if I'm especially in middle school, but everywhere, there's a bias sometimes against manipulatives, like they're babyish, or if you use that, it means you don't understand. And normalizing that mathematicians use tools, all different kinds of tools, and we're going to use different tools is a really big part of Math Workshop Plus, I think. Do you agree, Dr. Nicki?
I do.
And so I say that to say, you might have to stretch yourself. Dr. Nicki and I have been in education for a long time, which means we didn't have any of these tools. So it's a little scary to learn. We've had lots of conversations about the technology we like and the technology we're not so comfortable with. And sometimes it's intimidating, but try baby steps. Not everything new is hard. And what we have found, and Dr. Nicki is a very big proponent of this, is something new could make your life a lot easier, like AI. So it's worth the time of, keep your focus on the goal of having an equitable learning environment, and then decide, I'm going to try something new. And tell the kids, oh, I'm doing it. Here's why I'm doing it. And I might make a mistake, and that's okay. You have the power of yet to.
And so the other one is strategy development. So you set meaningful goals, you have kids organize themselves and monitor, self-monitor, self-assess. Checklists are a great way to go because then they do it and they check, did I do this thing? And then the next thing, does this make sense? So I love checklists and scaffolds. So when we think about the cell connection here, students should be encouraged to reflect on their journey. When do we ever ask kids, how are you doing? How are you feeling about what you're learning? What is easy about this and what is tricky about this? Just that emotional check-in about the academic journey is really important. What do you need from me to help you do better? And what do you need to do better? Those things are all really important. Having notebooks that kids can reflect on, and also giving kids feedback. Super important.
So if we think about ourselves as learners, because we are learners, right? That's why we're here on this webinar, and we've told you some of the things we've learned. What might be a barrier that would get in your way of enacting some of the strategies we've discussed, so that maybe we can give you some tips to get around those barriers? So take a moment in the chat. Time is always a barrier, for sure. So I'm a big fan of using my weeks leading up to school to try to prepare for my math workshop. However, some of these things are really quick. So if I were in your spot, I'd be thinking, what are the low hanging fruit things that I can, do right away that will make a difference? Like language frames are not going to take long. What could you do during your preparation period? if a classroom is a shared classroom, and I actually work with several people who are like that, they have a cart and they hang a lot of things right from their cart, or they have things on magnets that go up and down. It's not ideal, but it's still there and it works. Also, the reference folder is great for anyone who's traveling to multiple classrooms because the students can have the reference material right there.
One of the teachers said in middle school, teaching it 5 times a day, you're not going to make 5 anchor charts. Allison, do you want to speak to that?
I will talk about that. So you will make your anchor chart with if you have multiple students coming through, you'll make it on your interactive whiteboard or your regular dry erase board or chalkboard or whatever you have, and take a picture of it. And then you're going to consolidate those into one so that it becomes the norms for all of your classes. And you can talk about it. If there's something that came up in one class and not in another, you definitely want to bring it to their attention. I also saw a comment about your math program. Using what you have in your math program is always our first recommendation. Use the language supports they have, use the routines they have, use the stuff they have for differentiation, and then elevate it. You're going to make it better. I've never seen a math program that has a beat and number line in it yet. And we are big fans of that for place value for a million reasons that we can't talk about right now. So don't be afraid to add to what is already there. If other teachers have taught something or a parent has taught something before you got there, it's really about getting kids to understand why and go back and forth. But we do see that quite often. We'll keep monitoring that chat as we go, but we're getting close to time here. So we just want to wrap up by saying we wrote this book as an act of advocacy for the rights of the learner. Olga Torres in 2020 wrote about this. And we spent time thinking about you are learners too. So it applies to your students, but it also applies to you. And the rights of the learner state that your students and you have the right to be confused. You might try something and it might not work. That's the story of Math Workshop in general. You try that bombed. I'm going to try a different organizational system. And I always say it's a 3-year process. So you have that right to be confused. You have that right to have like the mud on your windshield, and it's going to get clearer as you go on. Dr. Nicki, they also have the right to
claim a mistake and revise your thinking. Right. It's not going to be perfect, and you're going to make mistakes, and you just revise your thinking. And giving kids that is super important in workshop. You must create an environment where kids have the permission structure set up to revise their thinking. So when they're in the middle, that's how you get kids to share and not be attached to the answer. Say, just tell us what you're thinking. You can always revise your thinking.
And I love saying that to them. Did you revise your thinking? You and your students have the right to speak, to listen, and be heard. So think about who in your classroom may have a barrier that is blocking that right for them to speak, to listen, and be heard. We have students who have communication devices, but it's not just those. Those are the obvious ones. Those are the visible ones. But what are the invisible ones who their voice might be obscured by a barrier? That's who we're thinking about. And lastly, you also have the right, Dr. Nicki,
to do and represent, to write, do and represent only what makes sense to you. So you've got to own this. It's got to be yours. And the way you do that is you try, and try again. I don't know. I'm about to say the quote wrong, so I'm just going to say that before I say it. But there's an ancient Chinese quote that says something like, "Fall down 7 times and get up 8."
That works.
And that's my rendition of it. And so that's really how Math Workshop works. Fall down 7 times and get up 8.
That's right. You're always going to be revising anyway. If you weren't that type of teacher, you wouldn't be on this webinar. So we're always getting better. We're always learning. And we have given, I always say, this is a very big buffet within this book. You're going to decide how hungry you are and what you want to eat. And that might be different this year with this group of students than it will be next year. So we're really excited that you will have the tools in your toolkit to make all of your efforts that you put in more efficient, more effective, more equitable, and more engaging for you and for your students. So our call to action for you is, would you like to say it, Dr. Nicki?
What is one thing that you will add to your practice beginning tomorrow?
No pressure, but we want you to do it tomorrow.
Or at least think about adding. Thank you for.
Right. I think we're just about at time. I wanted to say a huge thank you to Alison and Dr. Nicki for sharing your wisdom and leading us in such an interesting and important conversation today. Thank you for everyone for your active engagement. You really, for spending your evening time with us and bettering yourselves as teachers. It's been very engaging. Thank you again to Alison and Nicki and everyone who has joined us today. And we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.